Um, and again, at the end of the webinar, I will provide links for accessing the recording in the chat, so stay tuned for that. To ensure a high quality recording, all attendees are encouraged to mute your mic. If you have any questions during the presentation, just type them into the chat box in the Zoom control panel, and if we have time at the end, we will get to them. Now, without further ado, Sharon, take it away.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday, TGIF. We're here to talk about relationships. And since it's February, I thought this would be a really good week and month to talk about it. It's relationships with ourselves, relationships with others, how we can build those relationships. So, I'll try to monitor the chat. And I don't want things to get lost. So at the end of the presentation, if you've asked a question and it hasn't been answered, you can always feel free to raise your hand. So connection, it's really interesting. I was reading in January and February's edition of Harvard Business Review. They did a Q&A with Ron Howard. And, he was the Opie Taylor of the Andy Griffith Show. He was the Richie Cunningham of my generation with Happy Days. And he dreamed of being a producer. And he had to make that challenging transition from actor to producer. And it was amazing. I had no idea that he produced over 120 shows and films. And what he shared, they were talking about relationships and connection. And he talked about directing Betty Davis when she was in her 70s, and how Betty Davis was not thrilled that this young kid was going to, be directing her. And so he had to figure out a way to connect so they could work together. And what he found is that he connected by asking questions and being curious and gaining, her respect. He would ask, how might this work? Or how would you do this? And what was the important thing, and the reason why I'm bringing it up, is because he remembered that he was the director. At the end of the day, he had the ability to say no. But the takeaway is that people recognize his willingness to listen, his willingness to be open, which made that connection, that bond stronger. He could always say no, but he had the ability to say yes, and they felt heard. And I think that creative problem solving is what's really important in our interactions today. Again, Harvard Business Review has another lesson that they shared with us in a survey. They surveyed over tens of thousands of employees concerning global engagement. And what they found is that leaders that rated in the top 10% in recognition and providing affirmation had 70% more engagement. So what does that mean? That means, can we pause? Can we learn to listen with an open heart? And if we do that, can we increase engagement and become better managers? And so as we start our journey today, we're going to talk about the power of connection. We're going to talk about active listening techniques, affirmations, and networking tools. I want to bring this up. This is a really good book. It's new. And it is it's called The Good Life. And what it is, it's an eye-opening study about adult development and how people live fulfilling lives. What was their key to happiness and connection? What was their key to health and wellness? And this Harvard study of adult development, as I said, spans 84 years. And they look at different generations. They look at different ethnicities. They look at different socioeconomic paths. And what they found is that it was really relationships, the relationships people had in their community, the relationships they had with themselves, the relationships they had with their loved ones that actually helped them live a better life. It wasn't money. It was the power of connection. And so it's never too late to take a pause and figure out how we can start building those connections. And I'm going to give you a tool at the end that maybe will be helpful to you. So active listening. This is harder than it sounds, I know. You know, we listen and then we paraphrase. So you paraphrase what the person says. You evoke, you ask questions. What? How? Be careful of the why questions, because sometimes that can be, you know, considered judgmental. So it's better to, you know, how would you do this? What is important to you? Not why is this important to you? What about this? Finding out the purpose, you know, expressing empathy, really listening with an open heart, you know, validate someone, and again, avoid judgment. And so here's some examples of active listening. What I hear you say is, so somebody says something to you and then you repeat it back. Or it sounds like, or when you say X, if you have a question, do you mean? What do you mean? How can I be helpful? What is a better way to interact? If someone's frustrated, you know, I sense you're frustrated. What can I do? How can I help? I don't know if you guys have watched the show on Netflix, New Amsterdam, but one of that, the show talks about or discusses how it can help. And the hospital administrator is constantly trying to figure out, listen, and find out what problems people are having and how to solve them. And what's interesting about that is in problem solving, we aren't always right. We don't always hit the mark, but it's the trying, it's the listening. And I don't know if anybody has any questions about that. You can put them in the chat, but that's important. You know, Seneca says one of the most beautiful qualities of friendship is to be understood, or is to understand and to be understood. So as we pause and we think about the relationships that are meaningful to us, how are they meaningful? What about those relationships or those connections make them rich? And we all have different kinds of connections. So maybe take a pause and write down what's important to you about those connections and how they help you enrich your life or help you in your workplace. So let's talk a little bit about affirmations. You know, what are they? Well, they should be authentic, unconditional. You should avoid what we call in the coaching world as cheerleading or praise. Emphasize intention. Yes, did somebody have something they wanted to say? I heard somebody come on. Okay, and then there's always the reframe. So does anybody have any questions regarding how to write a positive affirmation? Or would you, I'm going to give you some examples, and then I'd like you to try it to write in the chat some affirmations. So here's some examples. Let's say you've got an individual that speaks up in a staff meeting, and it's about something they feel passionate about. You know, a positive affirmation could be, it took a lot of courage for you to stand up for yourself. Or if you're in a meeting and somebody does a lot of planning, and maybe their planning, you know, hits the mark and part of it doesn't hit the mark. Well, one of the ways to release tension is to affirm them and to say, you put a lot of careful planning into X this past week. Make them feel heard, and then you can give them whatever constructive criticism you have, but it's about holding space for the person and not and really being there and holding them. Or if somebody, you have a staff meeting or you have a team meeting, or maybe you've got some interaction with someone and you really don't know, you really value them, you can say, I understand your perspective, which reflects the team's values. So you could always try to be looking for the good if you can and do a reflection. So we're going to do an exercise in positive affirmations, and you can either write it in the chat or you can write it individually on your own. But it's about, pretend it's a friend. This is somebody you really like and that you really care about. And it could be at work, could be at home, could be somebody in your PTA, somebody you serve on a board. I'd like you to write down the positive traits and skills, and do that first. I'm going to give you a minute to do that. I have it on my phone. So and if anybody wants to write, friend X and put something in the chat, feel free. Friend X. Okay, now I'd like you to, non-wife, work hard and put her on it. Active listener, non-judgmental. We have friend X, thoughtful, funny. You're a good listener. All right, now I'd like you to think about someone you don't like, someone that rubs you a little bit the wrong way. And I'd like you to apply the same exercise. Thank you, everyone who's participating in the chat. I'm going to give you another minute to think about what you'd write about someone, find the good in someone. It's really good. You guys are doing great, and you're being really, really honest in how hard it is about to find that good in someone where there's some friction. And I'm just going to bring up what's interesting about this is when you're working with someone that that's difficult, there's something called mirror neurons, and it's how we interact with the person that whether if we're happy, the other person is happy, they're going to pick up on that. Let's say a perfect example of this is if you yawn. If you yawn, the other person's liable to yawn. And so we say, so the thing is, if you can try to find something, be authentic, but something that would help you connect with that person to reduce the friction, or find your happy place. Think about what makes you happy. Is it your dog? Is it your child? Is it something that you ate for lunch? Something like that. Or somebody says, encouraging, creative, try to find a strength. So try to do that. If you can't, I know this is a challenging exercise, but remember, if you can find something good in somebody else, then it's going to help with that interaction. And so that's why I bring this up. And again, mirror neurons are really important. So when you are interacting with someone, and if there's someone that really creates some friction in your life, try to show up in a way that's authentic, where you hold yourself, accountable and whole, and not give your positive energy away. So I hope that helps. So how to identify relationships and create connection. So you guys have done a good job in the chat talking about, yes, do you think relationships can be repaired? I absolutely think relationships can be repaired, Maria, and it depends on what that friction is and the circumstances, but they can be repaired. It just depends on the circumstances, and we can talk about that at the end if you'd like, about anything on how you can go about doing that. So how to identify relationships and create connection. There are different relationship types. So we know we have personal relationships, professional relationships, and then other types of relationships. And those others can be if you belong to a parent group, or you belong to a board, or you're even in the grocery store. I mean, if you go to the same grocery store, there's going to be that you'll see the same people there, and what those relationships are about. And what's interesting about all of these is it's really about how you connect, how you show up, and then also how the other person shows up and you interact. And so what I want to talk to you about when we're thinking about relationships is, if you want to grow your relationships, or you just want to, I'm going to go forward. There's this thing called My Buddy Map that was put together by BJ Fogg at Stanford University. And you're in the center, and then there are different levels. There's level 1, level 2, and level 3. And so when you're thinking about your relationships, I'm going to go back a slide. Think about, if you've got a project, if it's professional, who are my best collaborators? Who would I want on my dream team? Who inspires me? Who supports me? Who do I want to, if it's personal or even in the workplace, who do I want to get to know better? And what are my strengths? And so when you think about asking these questions, or you can ask other questions, you would put them on your, you kind of map it. So I'll give you an example. Here's me. I'm in the middle, and I belong to the East Sac Chamber of Commerce. So I'm learning about who do I want to get closer to? Why do I want to get closer to them? Is it for a business? Is it just because I want friends to go have coffee with? What is my purpose? What is my vision for this map? And then I would start asking myself questions like, again, the questions are, who are my best collaborators? Who do I want on my dream team? Who supports me? And then you'd put them on different levels, and then you would put their name to the side, their name and their contact. Because if you want to grow relationships, or you want to figure out how to make your connections stronger, you got to come down to it comes down to how you envision them, what the purpose is, where you want to go with them, how do you want to connect? And I have some things in the chat that say, should relationships with your coworker go beyond the workplace, lunch, and on weekends? Well, that's kind of an HR question. I think that's up to the individual, and I don't mean to be, I just want to be careful with that one. I know from my own personal, I had coworkers that I went to lunch with and that we had friendships with. I mean, I had beyond work, but it depends on where you are in your journey, and that's really, you want to be careful with that. So I'm trying to move this slide forward. So we had another question that came up that says, sometimes easy to repair, even if you don't know what the rift is. Just saying, I don't know what it is. So that's an interesting one when you're talking about relationships and in general, depending on what the relationship is and how comfortable you feel, you could always inquire, different people have different levels of approach. Again, mirror neurons and how you show up in that conversation is really important. And also reading the other person before you go in a room and you make an appointment with someone or you want to talk to them, figure out where they are with their day. Make sure they're in a good place, because if they're in a good place and they're open, they're going to be probably more willing to receive you. All right, there's another question. A simple form, keep your friends closer, your enemies closer. Kind of a harsh way to say it. I always want to know when someone is not talking, the need, explore silence. Repairing family relationships could be hard since there are many emotions involved. I am going to give you guys a reference. I'm going to close the presentation and I'm going to give you a reference that might be helpful to you. There is something called OFNR, and it is non-confrontational communication. And that type of communication can actually help you. I'm having trouble, I apologize, with my screen right now. It doesn't want to advance the slides. So so what I'm going to do is I am going to close the presentation and we're going to read the chat, because I can see a lot of things are coming up for people and I want them to feel heard. And so relationships, the basic thing about relationships is you want to withhold judgment. You want to see if, to listen. You want to evaluate that connection when you're going in and you're talking to someone. It's really important to remember that most people want to feel heard, and that there are possibilities to friendship and connection and understanding if people feel that they've been given a good shot at being heard. And non-confrontational or this is a different, I'm going to stop the share, and I'm just going to pay attention to what people wrote in the chat, because I think it's really important that you all feel heard here, because there was one item that was written, somebody wrote in the chat about the energy being vampire-like. Would anyone like to talk about what it's like to walk in a room and to have that negative energy and how you handle that? Be neutral as much as possible. My big takeaway is how you properly communicate through feelings and your emotions, having empathy. Okay, would you guys like some tools on how, when you're in that type of environment and it's getting, a little amped up, or you're feeling uncomfortable, there are some very simple things that you can do to try an icebreaker in the group. Okay, so I'm going to give you, this is going to sound crazy and you're going to think, oh, this will never work. Well, there is a gentleman named Shirzad Charmaine, who he wrote a book called Positive Intelligence, and he talks about the power of meditation. Now, I know a lot of people don't have time for meditation, and so there's some easy things you can do to get back in your body if you're feeling some angst or some stress. You can take 2 fingers and rub them together like this. He calls them a PQ rep. and you can breathe. Just feel the air going in your nose and out your mouth. You can take 2 hands, you can rub them together. You can do this under the table. You can really, you know, if you're in a meeting and you're sitting down and things are getting kind of crazy and you just need kind of a break, you know, you can always excuse yourself and go to the restroom or come back, or if that's not an opportune time, always have in a meeting, I always have some water. So you can always take a sip of water and taste the temperature of the water. And so, you know, those types of things, but really feel your feet flat on the floor. These are all things that you can do independently to bring you back to center. So now, Phil writes, meditation works great icebreaker for slowing down negative energy. That's right. And, you know, it's an Insight Timer. That's a free app. You know, the sweet spot for meditation is 12 minutes a day. But even if you only have 2 to 5 minutes intermittently, that's all going to help you. And so the chat is moving. So I feel when I'm stressed, my feet not, yes, when my feet not flat. So if you're stressed, don't cross your legs. It's gonna, if you cross your legs, have you ever had your blood pressure taken and they tell you don't cross your legs? Don't cross your legs. Put your feet flat on the floor, and it's going to help you with that alignment to really breathe and feel that positive energy. Be aware of your body language. Are you leaning forward? Are your arms crossed? So that's another benefit. If you're doing PQ reps under the table, you're not going to cross your arms and you're not going to turn away. You know, lean in, be curious. If somebody's having a bad day, something's happened, probably. You know, is there any way you can find empathy for them? These are just a few tools to help you in your relationship building. Now, I know that we only have a couple minutes left. I hope this was helpful to you when you know, be curious. Really wonder about why someone is the way they are and how they're showing up. You know, ask some questions. Or so, you know, these are just some things. Is there anything else before we close today that can help you manage these stressful relationships and build your connection?
I'll take this one.
Okay, Cordell, what's going on?
Yes. First of all, I think this session was very helpful. You know, like in improving relationships. So one of the things that I do is I gotta have a mindset. You know, I do all the things that was listed on the screen. You know, like meditation is always helpful because like whenever I get tense, I said I just gotta do like the mantra, and it always works too. So it helps me to relax under stressful situations.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Would you like to share your mantra, or is it too personal? You don't have to.
Well, it's personal. Well,
Okay, then
actually, it's up. I mean, not positive. I mean, not personal, but it's like I'm an open-minded person, so I'm both.
okay. Okay. Well, can I share? I was working with a client earlier this week, and they were talking about how they got a call from their boss and they were just feeling overwhelmed, and they wanted a mantra. And I asked them, what would that be? What feeling would they want? And they said, calm, focused, worthy, and okay. So maybe as we leave today, as Cordell brought up, that we have that maybe a mantra, think about what those words would be for each of you and how you could repeat them and maybe match them with a picture. Something to think about. Linda, your hand's up.
Hi.
Hi.
I do meditation, and the point of the meditation I do is to realize who you are. What is you compared to everyone else? And from that point, if you can remember that moment in that meditation, it's easy to go back to that moment. But one of the things you can do is if you cross your arms, it protects the solar plexus chakra, which is just under the sternum, from absorbing that negative energy. You can also, when you hold your hand out, fold your thumb underneath and put those hands behind your back or down below so that people can't see it. And you can also change the energy in the room. It's just being like a little kid, just throwing a gold or a pink color up into the room and just imagine the room enveloped in that color. It changes the energy in the room, which changes everyone else. It kind of gives them permission to be calm and be present. So those are some of the things that I do that work really well. But just knowing that this is not mine, is it my job to change it? Sometimes, sometimes not.
Thank you, Linda. So what you're talking about is detachment and also some visualization that help you remain calm, focused. And does that resonate?
Not so much detachment, it's knowing who you are. And from
Knowing
my perspective, looking that I am a spirit and a body,
your
these are
spirit.
not my emotions. This is who I am. I came in here in a good mood. This energy is negative or lower than mine. So I'm just gonna kind of stay in my little bubble and allow them to be where they are. If not, then I can change the energy in the room.
Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. Would you use the same approach when it's people above you? I don't know, Linda, what do you think?
Yes, I would.
Okay,
But from my perspective, it's if everyone is in a better mood, but even the people who like to be in that lower vibration, sometimes they don't want to change. So then you just kind of allow them to be where they are and just notice that this is not me, this is not my emotion, this is not who I am today. That's the main thing, is realizing you walk in a room and you go, oh, that's not me. I don't think like that. I don't feel like that. So it gives you that space to be who you are in your good mood and let everybody else be where they are.
thank you, Linda. Thank you. And Cordell, did you want to comment? Or is your
Yes, yes. I just remember the other thing. One of the things that that helps me, to improve relation. It helps me to improve relationships with people is you know, ask yourself, what was you like when you was that age? And I was like, I had to stop for a minute and say to myself, I was like that when I was my nephew's age, and I was like, oh, I just had to figure out what was I doing at that age. So I had to do like a comparison. What was I doing? Uh, what was my life like when I was that age? Ugh, my lord.
so reflecting, and it sounds like some empathy
That's
for
it.
that's wonderful. That's beautiful. So how would you approach, for instance, people above you? No, thank you for both Linda and Cordell and everyone who has written in the chat. Know your body, for example, get plenty of sleep and maintain a good diet. All of those things can help with stress. Another thing is remembering that you are a perfect human being, that you were born into this world, your perfect self. And that as we age, there are judgments. And so trying to work and get through and not judge yourself, quiet your inner critic. Remember, you're a good person. Remember not to carry hard feelings into the next day. There's stress everywhere, Jerome says, and remember to breathe and to be patient. And that is that's beautiful. Look at these beautiful comments. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating, because I think we all learn from each other. And life is really hard, and it's been really hard during COVID. So congratulations on trying to come together and share your tips and tricks. Maria says you are all unique in your abilities. Wait a minute. and capable. So beautiful. All right. Fast-paced workplaces always make it hard for us to slow down. Absolutely right. And that's why we have to be mindful and learn to pause, the power of pause. If something strikes you as aggressive or that it's not, it's unkind, you know, maybe that person's just having a bad day. So how can you instigate or, you know, stop and pause and listen to your body before you respond? And so it's that power of pause, which can help you in your relationships. Is there anything else before we close today? Well, I want to wish you all a happy and joyful weekend. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. I think that this is really important that we learn from each other. So thank you so much and have a beautiful day. Happy Friday, TGIF.
Bye.
Thank you, Sharon, for a wonderful presentation. And we
All
will
right.
see you next month.
All right, we'll
And
see you later.
For everyone else, I have posted the link to where you can find the webinar later today in our webinar section.
All right, everybody take care.
Have a great weekend.
All right, be happy. Woohoo.
Bye-bye.